It was the kind of night where the sky looked bruised, purple clouds pressing low against the mountains, the air heavy and cold. I've been driving for nearly 6 hours on Route 97, cutting north through Washington State. I was hauling construction equipment back from a job in Oregon and just wanted to make it home before sunrise. The roads were empty. The only company I had was the hum of my tires and the occasional groan from my old pickup suspension. I'd taken this route plenty of times before, but that night, something about it felt different. The fog didn't roll like normal fog. It moved in thick, uneven layers, like smoke from something burning far away. That's when I realized how low my gas tank was. I glanced down and saw the needle sitting just above empty. The last town had been 30 miles back, and I hadn't seen another car for what felt like an hour. I turned off the radio. No signal, just static. Outside, the fog swallowed everything beyond the beams of my headlights. Then, out of nowhere, I saw her. At first, I thought she was a mile marker post or a reflector, but as I got closer, I could see her shape. A woman, maybe late 20s. She was standing perfectly still, facing the road, one arm raised, thumb out. She wore a long gray coat that looked soaked through, and her hair hung wet over her face. Normally, I'd never pick up a stranger this late, but it was freezing, and the thought of leaving her there in the middle of nowhere didn't sit right with me. I rolled down the window and leaned over her. "You okay out here?" I asked. She nodded, but didn't smile. Her voice was quiet, soft, almost like she'd forgotten how to speak. "Please," she said, "I just need to get home." Her breath came out in small, white clouds. I unlocked the door, and she climbed in. The smell hit me first. Not bad, just old, like wet wool and rust. She sat rigid, clutching her bag in her lap. "What's your name?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Claire," she said, eyes fixed straight ahead. "Thank you for stopping." I told her my name, then asked where she was headed. "There's a house," she said after a pause, "up near the turn for Hemlock Road." I didn't recognize the name, but figured it was one of the little back roads branching off Route 97. For a while, we just drove in silence. The fog made everything outside look unreal, like we were floating through clouds. I tried making small talk. "You live around here?" She nodded. "Born here." Her voice was almost melodic, but there was something distant about it. Then she said something that made my stomach tighten. "They don't stop here anymore." I looked over. Who doesn't? The drivers. Her tone was flat, matter of fact. "Not since the accident." I asked what accident she was talking about, but she didn't answer. She just smiled faintly, lips pale and cracked. After another 15 minutes, she spoke again. "You missed the turn." I frowned. "What turn?" She pointed toward the woods, but I couldn't see a road, just dense pine trees and fog. "There used to be a sign," she murmured. "It's gone now." I slowed the truck, scanning for a side road, but there was nothing. When I turned back toward her, she was gone. At first, I thought maybe she'd ducked down or dropped something, but the door was still locked. No sound, no movement, just that smell again, wet wool and rust. I slammed the brakes and jumped out, calling her name. My voice echoed into the fog, but there was no reply. I walked up and down that stretch of highway for 20 minutes. Nothing, no footprints, no bag, no sign of her car. The fog made every sound feel closer. The wind through the trees, the creak of my truck cooling. Eventually, I gave up. I got back in the cab, locked the doors, and sat there breathing hard. On the passenger seat, a small water stain had spread across the fabric, shaped almost like a handprint. I drove another 20 minutes before I spotted a light, a little roadside diner just off the highway. Inside, it smelled like coffee and old linoleum. I must have looked spooked because the waitress gave me a strange look right away. She poured me a cup and asked if I was all right. I told her what happened, about the woman, her name, how she'd vanished. "You said Route 97? Around mile 114. When I nodded, she froze. "That girl's been dead for 20 years, she said quietly. She walked me over to a framed article. It was yellowed and curling at the edges. The headline read, "Local woman killed in fog crash, Route 97." The photo showed a young woman with long dark hair, wearing a gray coat. Her name was Claire Henderson. The date on the article was November 17th, 1999. She'd been hit by a truck while trying to flag down help after her car broke down in the fog. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, staring at that photo. The waitress said people still claim to see her sometimes. usually on foggy nights, usually near that same mile marker. When they stop, she asks for a ride. Sometimes she disappears mid-drive. Sometimes she just fades out of the headlights. I wanted to believe it was a coincidence. Maybe I'd seen something else. Maybe I was just tired. But then the waitress said something that froze me to the core. "You said she told you to turn onto Hemlock Road." I nodded slowly. She was buried off Hemlock Road. I couldn't stop thinking about it on the way home. I told myself it had to be exhaustion, maybe a hallucination. But as I passed mile marker 114 again, my headlights flickered. And then I saw something in the fog, the outline of a woman standing by the road, thumb out. This time I didn't stop. I never took Route 97 again. Sold the truck a few months later. But every year, around the same date, I dream of that night. The cold air, the empty road, her voice whispering. They never stop here anymore. And in the dream, I always slowed down. And she's always waiting. 2 summers ago, my girlfriend Haley and I were driving cross-country from Arizona to Oregon. We decided to take the scenic route through Nevada. Miles of open desert, no towns for hours. I checked our route a dozen times. But between the fading cell signal and an old-school paper map that wouldn't stay folded, I somehow missed one crucial detail. There's a 100-mile stretch between Tonopah and Reno where nothing exists. No gas, no service, no help. By the time the sun dropped, our gas light was glowing bright orange. Haley tried to joke about it, said we'd find something soon, but the road signs disagreed. Next services, 87 miles. The highway stretched straight into darkness. No cars behind us, no lights ahead, just the occasional tumbleweed scraping along the shoulder. I switched the radio to AM, hoping for static that sounded like music. Nothing. Then, in the distance, a flicker, red light. Like a tail light. Relief hit me hard. I pressed the gas. We slowed beside it. The truck looked ancient, dust-covered, windshield cracked. No one inside. I got out to see if anyone needed help. The desert night was freezing, the kind of cold that bites your lungs. "Hello." I called out. Nothing. Then I noticed the license plate, coated with red dust, but the registration sticker read 2003. The truck had been sitting there a long time. Couldn't argue. I climbed back in, locked the doors, and we drove on. About 10 minutes later, the fog rolled in. Thick, heavy, out of nowhere. The temperature dropped at least 15 degrees. And then, a shape appeared ahead, a figure standing dead center in the lane. I hit the brakes so hard the car fishtailed. He raised one arm and pointed behind us. "Turn around," he said. "You missed the last exit." His voice was calm, but something about it scraped at my nerves. I stammered. "We're headed north to Reno." He cut me off. "Not tonight, you're not." Then he turned and walked straight into the fog. Before I could react, the engine coughed twice and died. Every gauge dropped to 0. Headlights out. We sat in pitch darkness. Haley whispered, "Did you see his face?" I didn't answer. I was too busy trying the ignition again. Nothing. Outside, footsteps crunched on gravel. Slow, deliberate, visual. Haley's hand gripping my arm. "Please," she said, "lock the doors." I already had. Haley held her phone up to the window, waving it around. Then she froze. "Wait." 1 bar. She dialed 911. It rang once, then stopped. A man's voice came through, low and crackly. "Stay in the car. Don't get out at 237. The line went dead. For a second, the lights blinked alive. The road was empty again. No sheriff. No footprints. Then from somewhere in the fog came a scraping sound. Metal against asphalt. Slow. Haley was crying now, whispering that we needed to run. But where? We were miles from anything. The fog thinned just enough for me to see movement behind the car, a shadow crawling toward us on all fours. I grabbed Haley's hand and bolted. We ran until our lungs burned, the gravel cutting our shoes. Behind us, I heard the sound again, the dragging. But when I turned, the highway was gone. All I could see was fog. Thick, endless, white. We kept running until a light appeared ahead, faint and yellow. It looked like an old highway rest shack, a radio tower beside it. We pounded on the door until it opened. An older man in a ranger uniform stared at us, confused. "What in God's name are you two doing out there?" We tried to explain. The sheriff, the breakdown, the voice. His face went pale. "There's no sheriff's patrol on 237, he said quietly. "They shut that section down years ago. Sinkholes. Too many accidents." He pointed to our route. "You came up 95. This stretch here, that's 237. Officially closed in 2003 after a tanker explosion. Nobody drives it anymore," Haley whispered. "But we were just there." The ranger frowned. "Then how did you get here? That road doesn't connect anymore." I looked at the map again. Where 237 should have been, there was a blank space, just desert. One photo caught my eye. A sheriff in uniform. Same face, same torn jacket. The caption read, "Deputy Cal Walker, killed in line of duty, July 2003, Highway 237 explosion." The ranger said softly, "That tanker? He was the one who stopped to help." I felt my stomach drop. We waited at the ranger post until morning. When the sun came up, the fog was gone. A tow truck picked us up and dropped us back on 95. Before leaving, I glanced back at the map again. Someone had circled a spot in red ink. Mile marker 237. Below it, written in faded pencil, "Turn around." I still drive long distances for work, but I never take shortcuts anymore. And sometimes when the fog rolls in, I think about that man standing in the middle of the road, eyes hollow, jacket torn. If you ever find yourself on a lonely highway in Nevada and see mile marker 237, keep driving, because not every road leads somewhere. Some roads remember what happened on them, and some want you to join. My name's Evan Brooks. I spent 12 years with the Washington Highway Patrol. Mostly quiet nights, speeders, DUIs, the usual. But there's a stretch of road that never made the official maps. Locals call it Old Ridge Road. It starts somewhere near mile 184 on Interstate 5 and ends nowhere. For years, dispatch told rookies not to bother with it. Road doesn't exist, they'd joke. But every once in a while, someone would call 911 from there, panic in their voice, saying they'd seen flashing lights in the woods. It was 2:13 a.m. when I got the call. A woman's voice, crackly and terrified, came through dispatch. "There's an accident. 2 cars. Please hurry. Old Ridge Road." Dispatch hesitated before patching it to me. Old Ridge was supposed to be fenced off. Still, I'd never ignored a distress call. I radioed in and turned off the interstate. The second I left the main highway, my radio started crackling. GPS lost signal. Trees closed in on both sides. I drove maybe half a mile before I saw the light, flickering red and blue through the fog. At first, I thought backup had arrived. Then I realized the pattern was wrong. Too slow, too old. It looked like one of our old cruisers, same decals, same roof light. But we'd retired those units 15 years ago. I stepped out, calling through the fog. "Hello, State Patrol." Silence. Then, from the woods behind the car, came the crunch of boots. A figure appeared. Uniform, hat, badge glinting faintly. He looked just like me. He didn't seem surprised to see me. He just pointed toward the wreck. "Driver's gone," he said, voice flat like a recording. "Need you to search the woods." Something about him fell hollow, like he was repeating lines he'd said before. I turned to grab my flashlight. When I looked back, he was gone. I tried calling dispatch. Static. Then, under the static, a man's voice. "Unit 12, officer down. Old Ridge Road." That's my call sign. Unit 12. I followed tire tracks into the trees. After about 50 yards, I found something half buried in leaves, an old patrol badge. Baino 2447. The number sounded familiar. When I checked my logbook later, it was registered to Officer Ray Hughes. Died in the line of duty, 1994. Curiosity got the better of me. I pressed play. Unit 12, responding to accident. Old Ridge Road, fog's getting thick. Then a scream. Metal crunching. Silence. It was his last transmission. I jumped in, turned the key. Engine wouldn't start. Battery dead. Lights out. From the tree line came the faint wail of a siren. Not mine. Not modern. The old analog type, warbling and slow. It got closer. Then I heard Hughes again, right outside the window. "You shouldn't be here." I looked up and saw my own reflection in his visor. Then everything went black. They found me 3 hours later, asleep in my cruiser on the side of I-5. No sign of Old Ridge Road. No reg. No hugis. My dash cam footage was gone. Wiped clean. But on the tape recorder in the passenger seat, there was a new recording. Unit 12, officer down. Old Ridge Road. Same voice. Only this time, it ended with my name. I dug through the archives myself. Over a dozen cases of officers who vanished responding to phantom calls along that stretch. Everyone listed last known location, Old Ridge Road. The most recent? A rookie in 2019. Same unit number as mine. I quit the force a year later. But sometimes when I'm driving home late, the radio hisses and I hear that same call. Unit 12, respond to accident. Old Ridge Road. And for a split second, I swear I see a turn-off sign glowing in the fog. But when I blink, it's gone. If you ever hear a patrol car siren in the middle of nowhere, don't follow it. Because not every officer on the road is alive. Some are still working the beat, they never made it off. If this story gave you chills, hit subscribe before something hits your window tonight.